The morning Haroon Vale lost his job was the same morning his little boy asked him if clouds ever got tired of carrying rain. Haroon stood outside a glass office tower in the bright daylight, holding a cardboard box against his chest like it contained pieces of his broken life, while his 6-year-old son, Rayhan, waited at school with a lunchbox that had only 2 slices of bread and hope inside it. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the silent strength of parents who keep smiling while breaking inside, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Silent Dad Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Haroon had not always been the kind of man who counted coins before buying milk. 3 years earlier, he had been a quiet but proud father with a small apartment, a steady job, and a wife named Soraya whose laughter could make even unpaid bills feel less frightening. But illness came like a thief in daylight, taking Soraya slowly, leaving behind hospital receipts, sleepless nights, and one little boy who still sometimes set a cup of tea on the table for a mother who would never return. After her funeral, Haroon learned that grief did not arrive only at night. It sat beside him on buses, stood with him in grocery lines, and woke him before dawn when Rayhan mumbled for his mother in his sleep. His new job at Elliston House, a busy events company, was supposed to be temporary. He worked as a day porter, cleaning conference rooms, carrying chairs, polishing floors, and fixing whatever broke before rich clients noticed. His boss, Mara Sloan, was known for being sharp, elegant, and impossible to impress. She walked through the building in pressed suits and quiet authority, her heels clicking like a clock reminding everyone that time was money. Haroon respected her from a distance. She never wasted words, never smiled without reason, and never seemed to notice the people who made her perfect events possible. That Thursday was a daytime charity luncheon for wealthy donors, and the building glittered under sunlight. White flowers lined the lobby, silver trays moved through rooms, and guests laughed over tiny desserts that cost more than Haroon's dinner budget for a week. Haroon had been at work since 5 in the morning after sleeping only 3 hours because Rayhan had a fever during the night. He moved through the service hallway with tired legs and a steady face, telling himself that fathers did not fall apart where children could see. Near noon, disaster struck. A decorative water pipe above the small stage leaked suddenly, dripping onto expensive fabric and threatening to ruin the event. People panicked, assistants shouted, and Mara Sloan appeared with eyes like storm clouds. While others argued, Haroon grabbed towels, climbed a ladder, shut the valve, patched the leak with emergency tape, and saved the stage before the first speaker walked in. For one brief moment, everyone looked at him like he mattered. Mara noticed. After the luncheon ended, she found him in the storage room folding wet cloths. Sunlight came through a high window and cut across the dusty air. She studied his exhausted face, the dark circles under his eyes, and the way his hands trembled slightly from hunger and overwork. Then she asked, almost casually, "Do you want to stay tonight?" Haroon thought she meant overtime. He thought of Rayhan waiting at after-school care, of the late fee he could not pay, of the rent envelope sitting empty on his kitchen shelf. So he gave a tired little laugh and said that if she had a spare room, a warm meal, and someone to help a first grader with spelling homework, he might never leave. It was a joke. A poor man's joke, wrapped in shame and survival. But Mara did not laugh. She went very still, as if his words had opened a door inside her that had been locked for years. Haroon instantly regretted it. He apologized, lowered his eyes, and returned to folding cloths. But Mara asked him where his son was. The question was simple, yet it almost broke him. He told her only what he had to, that Rayhan was at school, that they managed, that life was difficult but not impossible. He said it the way people say they are fine when they are standing on the edge of collapse. That afternoon, Mara did something no one expected. She told him to clock out early but paid him for the full day. Then she had her driver take him to Rayhan's school. Haroon protested, embarrassed and afraid of accepting too much, but Mara's voice left no room for argument. When they reached the school, Rayhan ran out with his small backpack bouncing and his cheeks flushed from leftover fever. He stopped when he saw the black car, then smiled at his father with complete trust, the kind that made Haroon feel both blessed and crushed. Mara watched from the car as Haroon knelt, zipped Rayhan's jacket, and listened seriously while the boy explained that he got one spelling word wrong because his pencil broke. There was no performance in Haroon's tenderness, no audience he was trying to impress. He was simply a father loving his child with everything he had left. The next morning, Haroon arrived at work expecting distance, perhaps even dismissal for crossing a line with his joke. Instead, Mara called him into her office. The room overlooked the city, bright with daylight, clean and cold. On her desk sat a small framed photograph turned halfway away. Haroon noticed it only because the face in the picture belonged to a young boy. Mara told him she had reviewed his file. He had never missed a shift without notice, never complained, and had quietly repaired problems outside his job description for months. She offered him a new position as facilities coordinator, with better pay, regular hours, and health benefits. Haroon stared at her, unable to speak. Pride told him not to cry. Fatherhood told him crying was allowed if it meant his son might finally sleep in a warm room without hearing his father whisper apologies to unpaid bills. Things began to change slowly, like sunrise entering a dark apartment. Haroon paid the overdue rent. He bought Rayhan new shoes, not second-hand ones with another child's name written inside. He filled the refrigerator with fruit, eggs, and the chocolate milk Rayhan had stopped asking for. Yet the biggest change was not money. It was the return of breath. Haroon could breathe again. But Mara's kindness had roots deeper than charity. Weeks later, during another daytime event, Rayhan's school closed unexpectedly because of a water issue, and Haroon had no one to watch him. Terrified of losing the job he had just been given, he brought Rayhan to the office and kept him quietly in a corner of the maintenance room with coloring pages. Mara found the boy there drawing a picture of 3 people under a yellow sun, himself, his father, and a woman with angel wings. Mara asked who the angel was, and Rayhan said it was his mother, but sometimes he drew extra grown-ups because his father looked lonely. The words landed in Mara's chest with painful accuracy. She invited Rayhan to sit in the empty conference room where sunlight poured across the table, and she gave him paper, markers, and a muffin from the event kitchen. Haroon apologized again and again, but Mara only watched Rayhan draw. That day, Mara finally told Haroon what the photograph on her desk meant. Her son, Callum, had died 8 years earlier from a sudden infection when he was 7. After that, she had buried herself in work because work was easier than memory. She built a company, earned respect, and became a woman people feared, because fear was simpler than pity. Haroon listened without interrupting. He understood that some grief wore old sweaters and some wore expensive suits, but it was grief all the same. From then on, the office became strangely warmer. Mara still ran Elliston House with discipline, but she began seeing the invisible people inside it. She approved emergency family leave for staff. She created a small childcare support fund. She asked the kitchen to send leftover untouched food to a shelter instead of throwing it away. People whispered that Haroon Vale had changed the boss, but Haroon knew the truth. Pain had recognized pain, and kindness had simply found a crack to enter through. Still, life did not become perfect. Rayhan missed his mother fiercely. Some nights he cried into Haroon's shirt and asked why good people had to leave. Haroon had no answer, only arms. He learned that healing was not forgetting, it was making room for love beside the wound. Mara, too, had hard days. On Callum's birthday, she did not come to work until noon. Haroon found her later in the rooftop garden, staring at the city. He did not offer speeches. He only placed a paper cup of tea near her and stood quietly beside her until her breathing steadied. Months passed. One bright afternoon, Elliston House hosted its biggest public charity event of the year, this time for struggling single parents. The ballroom was filled not with wealthy donors alone, but with mothers, fathers, children, teachers, nurses, cleaners, and people who knew what it meant to stretch one meal into two. Mara stood on stage and spoke about second chances. She did not mention Haroon by name at first, but everyone who worked there knew. Then she invited him up. Haroon froze. He hated attention. His hand still remembered the cardboard box from the day he thought everything had ended. But Rayhan, sitting in the front row wearing his new blue sweater, clapped with all his small strength. So Haroon walked onto the stage. He looked out at the crowd and saw tired parents, hopeful children, and Mara standing beside him with tears shining but not falling. He spoke plainly. He said that sometimes a joke is not really a joke. Sometimes it is a cry for help wearing a smile because dignity is the last coat a struggling person owns. He said no act of kindness is small when someone is drowning quietly. He said his boss had not saved him by giving him a job, she had saved him by seeing him. The room went silent, then broke into applause that felt less like noise and more like rain after drought. Rayhan ran onto the stage and hugged his father's legs, and Haroon lifted him into his arms. For the first time in years, he did not feel like a man barely surviving. He felt like a father standing in daylight. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Silent Dad Stories. Sometimes one story can remind a struggling parent that they are not invisible. Special request: comment kindness stays if you believe one compassionate moment can change an entire life. Years later, people still talked about the day a single dad made a tired joke and changed a company forever. Haroon never became rich, but he became steady. Rayhan grew taller, louder, and happier, carrying his mother's memory like a candle instead of a wound. Mara remained in their lives, not as a replacement for anyone, but as proof that broken hearts can still become shelter for others. And whenever Haroon passed the storage room where it all began, he remembered the question that once sounded like overtime and became a doorway to grace. Do you want to stay tonight? In the end, it was not an invitation to remain in a building. It was life asking him not to give up yet.